Time now for our new weekly segment, Talking Points, with Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA. Charlie, with all the massive problems that stem from illegal immigration, the huge cost to state governments, the spread of diseases, gang violence, and drugs, the American left instead chooses to focus all their bile on attacking President Trump on behalf of children separated from parents along the southern border. What are your thoughts about media bias surrounding this immigration issue?
It's unbelievable. If you look at the statistics, under Obama, there were over 90,000 kids that were detained. I don't remember the Democrats going down to the border or protesting that when it happened. But look, this is only an issue because people in both political parties have refused to build the wall, have refused to strengthen the border, and have refused to cut off the incentives that are making people from Central America and from Mexico send unaccompanied minors to the border to come to America in the first place illegally. And so if you don't shut off the incentives, what are the incentives? The government welfare benefits, the driver's licenses for illegal aliens. So President Trump is determined to solve the issue, not further demagogue it, but the Democrats would rather demagogue it because they know that it can create a wedge and potentially be a political winner, but they'd much rather do that than actually come to some form of a solution so that this would no longer be a problem in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you think about how the liberal media is much more interested in the sensationalism of this story. So much so that they actually took pictures of immigrant children in cages that took place during the Obama administration and let the American people think that this was under Trump. Here's the thing for me that bothers me, and I want your thoughts on this. We keep forgetting in these immigration debates that to enter this country illegally is a felony crime. Can you think of any other felony crime in this country, Charlie, where if a mom or a dad engaged in a felonious crime, they would not have their kids taken from them? They would have their kids taken from them and put in boarding centers, just like these immigrant kids are. What's the difference between those things?
There is no difference. And so the left tries to say, oh, they're seeking asylum. Well, there's a process for that. You have to go to a port of entry, not just cross the border anywhere you want, whenever you want to do it. And so that argument falls apart instantaneously. So look, illegal immigration and the lack of enforcing our laws has created this perpetual political crisis where you have foreign nationals within the United States. And I'm tired of calling them illegal immigrants. We should call them what they are. They are foreign nationals. They're citizens of another country. Therefore, they're not the constitutional rights and the capacity for them to declare themselves as citizenships or legally domiciled in the country does not pertain to them. And so I find it very hard to strike a balance to say, oh, we should just defer the rule of law to felons to 14 to 20 million people. So you're spot on here. Your analysis is exactly right. We have to be a nation of laws and of borders, and a primary component of a nation state is a strong border, is a definitive line of where those laws begin and where they end. And we are not Mexico, and we are not Canada, and that's why borders matter.
Well, the hypocrisy, I think, is even greater than that. I mean, we keep hearing about how these kids, these families that are coming to our border are broke. They're starving to death. They're sometimes on the verge of heat collapse. They're carrying diseases with them that they need to be treated for. So what is the American government doing? They are taking these kids at the border, kids who their own parents can't look after. They can't feed these kids. They can't provide vaccines for these kids. They can't provide shelter for these kids. The American government is taking these kids and providing those things for those children. And yet to the American media, better let these kids pass out and die on the border so you can blame Trump than give Trump credit for actually trying to look after the needs of these immigrant kids.
Right. Trump's trying to solve the problem, but let's go through the numbers of illegal immigration and the harm that it is causing in America. An illegal immigrant is twice as likely to commit a crime versus a natural-born citizen, according to the Arizona Department of Corrections. Illegal immigration costs the U.S. taxpayer over $130 billion a year, and they're worrying about a couple $1 billion for a wall. Really? So we have 56,000 illegal immigrants in federal prison. 56,000. Do you know the statute to get into federal prison? You have to do something really, really bad to get into federal prison, like drug trafficking or sex trafficking. Speaking of sex trafficking, 12,000 children are illegally sex trafficked across the southern border every single year. These are kids. I mean, this is not, anything to joke about. 12,000 kids are sex trafficked a year across the southern border. Horrible. Guns. Millions of illegal guns come across the southern border. The left wants gun control. Well, border control would ensure gun control, the flow of illegal guns in this country. 98% of the heroin and fentanyl in this country that are being used in middle America come across the southern border. So those people that care about the opioid epidemic, which everyone should care about, it involves illegal immigration. Those are just some of the statistics around the problem with the illegal immigration, but this could be solved with a militarized border and something that would define our sovereignty as a nation state instead of just this open border, loose policy that continues to deteriorate the socioeconomic and cultural fabric of America.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And Donald Trump has, from the beginning of his presidency, even 3 years ago when he began as a candidate, he made it absolutely clear that before you can have any meaningful abating of the suffering that goes along our southern border, you have to employ the Congress and the Senate to reform immigration policy. We know back from the 1980s when Ronald Reagan passed amnesty and Teddy Kennedy promised us, well, after you pass amnesty, then we'll reform immigration law. We did the amnesty and nothing was reformed.
And it was Reagan's biggest regret.
Exactly. Exactly. And to back up your point about how Donald Trump is proactively trying to fix this and the Senate and the Congress won't, here's a quote just today from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat leader in the Senate. He says he would rather, quote, keep the focus of this tragedy on Trump than support a bill that will ease illegal immigrant families and keep them united at the border. He would rather Donald Trump suffer politically than to actually help those kids. This is the leader of the Democrat Senate.
You have it right there. And so the Democrats would rather demagogue a political issue into oblivion than actually come to some form of consensus and agreement to solve that political issue. And so you're spot on here, and I think more than anything else, this will be a defining issue, whether Republicans and Trump do what they said they are going to do in defiance of the D.C. elite and the liberal media, or are they going to kowtow to the open border policies of some members in the Republican Party and the liberal Democrats? And so we should have compassion for all people, but I also have compassion for the families that have lost children at the hands and crimes of illegal immigrants. Also have compassion for the deterioration of the rule of law and the destruction of our culture. And so I'm very troubled and worried that a bad immigration deal is going to be struck here, just to try to kowtow to the Washington Post and the cable news networks. But it makes sense if you actually think about it. Trump is solving the Korean War. Tax cut is working unbelievable. We have more jobs than people are searching for them. Food stamp enrollments are going down. ISIS is on the run. Stock market at all-time high. Economic confidence has never been higher. People feel great about the country. If I was a Democrat, I'd be freaking out trying to find a political issue like this. Are you kidding me? It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for the country, and that's the most troubling part.
Yeah, and the Democrats have thrown everything they possibly could at Donald Trump, including this immigration thing, the Stormy Daniels debacle that blew up in their face. They're clearly putting politics above what's good for the country, but they've been doing that for quite a while. You brought up something about kids. It's absolutely right. We should be absolutely compassionate about kids and the suffering plight of kids. But you also mentioned that we want to be sympathetic to the plight of suffering American children, too.
Yeah.
You think about what's going on in this country, how the left uses these kids almost as rhetorical human shields, right? They don't really care about those kids. You think about in this country a couple months ago, we had a child that was actually taken away from his parents because the parents would not agree to let this underage kid transition to the opposite gender. And so we have American kids being separated from their parents all the time. What about what's going on with the crisis of American kids, too, that the Democrat Party is enabling in every way?
Correct. And if they actually cared about these kids, again, they would have been protesting and demagoguing during the Obama presidency. Because, look, here's the cool thing about at least our faction of the Republican Party is that our critiques and our focus are consistent despite who is in political office. So we've been arguing for strong borders during Obama, and now we're arguing for strong borders under Trump. Democrats argue for separation of children policy and family deferment now, but they didn't under Obama, which really blows apart their entire argument. I mean, it shows that this is a political issue for them, not an issue of principle, two totally different things. But you bring up a great point that, look, there's an argument that the Democrats care much more about the feelings of foreign nationals and illegal immigrants than the well-being of the American people. And I think that's going to be a defining political issue for many years to come.
I think you're absolutely right. And one question I've always wanted to talk about immigration here is, why is the focus always on America, who is receiving immigrants? We're not sending immigrants to Central and South America. We are not emptying our nations, our poor nation, our sick nation, our criminal nation down to the southern border. They are doing it here. How come there's never a discussion? How many of these immigrants, you pointed out, that come from Central and South America, how many of them walk hungry, walk without medical care or shelter, all the way through the country of Mexico, right? And there's never a single call for the Mexican government to engage in the kind of humane immigration policies that we actually have. How this kind of hypocrisy is lost on the media always angers me as well.
If all the citizens of Mexico and Central America were always going to be net benefits, they would prevent them from leaving the country. They would have a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border preventing them from entering the United States. Instead, we're the ones that have to patrol the border. In fact, it's in some ways, it eases the burden of the Mexican government, which should really make us think for a second. Wait a second, why are we doing this again? Why are we having this sort of conversation? So I think that a strong border will solve a lot of these issues. But look, the Democrats want open borders. They don't believe in borders. They don't believe in the national sovereignty of the United States.
Well, unless it's the borders around their gated mansions right, exactly. Well, you have a fantastic relationship with President Trump. I know he listens to you carefully, and you have great respect for the man. You know him. Talk a little bit to our audience about they're trying to paint Donald Trump in the media as this ogre who hates children. You know better. Talk a little bit about your conversations with Donald Trump with regards to issues like this.
He has great compassion for all people. He has a wonderful heart. He really, really does. And I've seen it firsthand. With that being said, he also understands that he's put in a position, he has an obligation to put this country first and our citizens first. He is not ruler of the world. He's not czar of the Central American people. He's not. He has a pure directive by statute of the U.S. Constitution to put the citizens of the American people first. The objectives and the obligations of the American people first. That's very admirable, that he actually is honoring that he's not trying to be head of the UN, or he's not trying to be in charge of all these other different humanitarian crises. So he has a great heart. He's going to do the best thing for the most amount of people, but he's also going to honor our laws and protect our borders and solve these structural crises, so it's not going to be a perpetual issue for many years to come.
And I think when this is all said and done, but certainly before we get to the next major election, I think by that time we're going to see that Donald Trump has taken another Obama-era problem. Kids on the border pent up in cages like chickens. Yes. He's going to take that problem that the media wasn't concerned about. He's going to fix it. And it's going to be one more way Trump is going to be able to brag. The media may not cover it, but brag justly that he has begun a reformation process in this country that's pretty unparalleled.
And you look at all that he's solved. He withdrew us from the horrible TPP deal, withdrew us from the Iran deal, withdrew us from the Paris Climate Accord. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He's deregulated the economy amazingly. He's brought back the American coal industry. He's made us energy independent, economic confidence all-time high, largest middle-class tax cut, opened up ANWR in Alaska, repealed the individual mandate, the Right to Try Act, the VA Accountability Act, the VA Choice Act. Whoa, that would be great for 8 years. He's done it in 500 days. And so he's solving problems, advancing solutions. He will be the greatest president of our lifetime and possibly the greatest president in American history.
Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA. It's been a great pleasure talking with you today. I look forward to us being together again next week.
Me too.
And be sure to look for a new interview with Charlie every week at this hour. And that does it for us this week. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, and we'll see you next time.